Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Daily Tactics here, and today we are back with some more Men of War Assault Squad 2, the Star Wars Galaxy at War mod. Now, I know that Rico's Brigade is usually on Saturdays, but I'm actually going to be at PAX East at the Overtone booth over this weekend, so I just didn't have time to make an entire Rico's Brigade episode because it is super time consuming and I want to do it right. So in lieu of that, I have a video that has been requested many times in my comment section. The First Order Troopers versus Clone Troopers. This is a matchup that we have never really seen on the channel before, and I think it is going to be very exciting to watch. So essentially, we have an army of Clone Troopers versus an army of First Order Stormtroopers. There is a small meeting in the middle, the two sides, trying to work out their differences, but it is inevitably going to end up in warfare. So the two little entourages in the middle are being flanked by entire armies behind. Here is the Clone Army back here. And then here is the First Order Army back here. Each army has roughly 300 or so troopers in it. There are standard squads for each side, but then we also have shock trooper squads. So here's the First Order shock trooper squad. There's 3 shock trooper squads for each side. And then here is an example of the clone trooper shock trooper squad. So, we're getting a little bit of diversity in units between the two sides, along with a standard army as well. And they'll all be rushing forward to fight each other, and we will find out who is the superior army, the Stormtroopers of the First Order or the Clone Troopers of the Republic. Either way, guys, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I do apologize for no Rico's Brigade, but don't worry, we'll be back next week better than ever. All right, without further ado, let's get it going. Alright fellas, let's get this battle started here. We're going in slow-mo for the first start of the battle here, and we're going to see who ends up the victor in this initial engagement right here. So we're going ahead and pressing start, and the clones in First Order sort of start to maneuver at first, and then they just start laying it on thick against each other. Grenades already flying. They're trying to kapuya each other. The clones have more grenades out, and the First Order seems to be trying to scatter a bit more than the clones are. The clones sticking together a bit more. Both sides diving out of the way because of incoming grenade fodder, but it does appear like the clone troopers do win that first little engagement straight down the middle. I don't know exactly why they ended up winning. Both sides were pretty much equal in terms of weapons and trooper count, but the clones managed to just beef it out. Maybe they strategized a little bit better as the First Order decided to sort of try and run backwards while the clones stood their ground. But whatever the case, the clones do end up with actually almost a complete squad straight down the middle. They lost very few troopers there. That is very interesting. Meanwhile, the First Order troopers in the very back of the map here beginning to move forward, beginning to get some fire out at these clone troopers that are down the middle, and this is going to be a setback probably for the remainder of the battle for the First Order. Due to this initial sort of loss in the battlefield, they are now going to have to first take the center from these remaining clone troopers and then get into positions, whereas the clone troopers are just sort of sending forward reinforcements right now from the very back of the map and not having to worry about any troopers down the middle. They in fact have allies down the middle that will support them. Either way, clones getting behind cover back here, the two armies that are mobilizing behind that little initial engagement area, finding cover for themselves. Neither side actually seeming to really blitzkrieg forward. They both seem to just sort of be chilling in the back lines a little bit here and firing away when they can. So, that initial engagement, probably not too much of a setback for the First Order, and in the grand scheme of things won't affect them too much. But, it might be a little bit of a morale depleter for the First Order. Just seeing their boys in the very front getting squashed almost instantaneously by a clone trooper squad. You really do hate to see it. But regardless, now it's just full-blown warfare in the streets. And both sides just rapid firing out as much stuff as possible. They are getting some good shots in. Not a ton of deaths right off the bat here because both sides do seem to be at maximum health, and they're grouped up really nicely for both sides, so individual soldiers are less likely to get sort of picked off here. But I have a feeling the losses will begin to ramp up relatively soon here. It seems like the clones are actually being a lot more aggro than the First Order. They are coming very, very far forward. from their initial spawn points, you know, coming into these abandoned houses, coming up to this cover that's available to them in the streets. Meanwhile, the First Order is essentially at their spawn still. I mean, we can look at this from the minimap here. The left in blue at the top left of the minimap, the blue is a lot more clumped together and a lot more in the back of the map. Meanwhile, the red, representing the clone troopers over here on the right, they're a lot more spread out and they seem to be coming forward a lot more. So there's sort of different tactics in both armies coming out right now, and I'm living for it, boys. This is kind of sick. There's even still a few clone troopers left alive in the middle. To be fair, they haven't been doing too much fighting, popping up only every once in a while and then ducking back down, which is probably adding to their longevity in this battle. But, you know, eventually these guys will probably be squashed. They do have really good cover up here, and I think that is helping them quite tremendously. Quite tremendously indeed. Either way, let's go into full speed here and check out what this battle has to offer. Instantly, the lag kind of spikes up there as we go into full speed. As units begin to die, we should get a little bit better FPS. You guys know I love it when units die, because then we get that spicy frame rate. It just improves tremendously. It's probably just due to the sheer number of troopers on the field and the sheer number of lasers being fired out by both sides. That's sort of resulting in this little bit of a lag spike we've got right now. Either way, I'm not seeing a lot of shock troopers for the First Order. Most of them are pretty spread out. Where did I... Oh, okay. A lot of them are on the far right over here, actually. Let's check out the shock troopers for the clones. I mean, they're pretty spread out as well. The shock troopers seem to have just sort of blended in with the rest of the armies. Oh, I guess there's a big blockade of them right there, but also mixed in with some standard clone troopers. For some reason, I really would have thought that the shock troopers would have stuck together as a unit and sort of assaulted, you know, in unison with one another, but instead they do appear to be, you know, playing alongside the rest of the army, not really acting as special units, but mainly just sort of, you know, acting as a whole army, which is probably for the best. You know, getting cocky and moving forward all on your own is a surefire way to get yourself and other troopers killed in the middle of the battlefield. Regardless, just sort of an overview point of the battle right now, it seems like the clones are sort of winning this left side. I'm seeing fewer and fewer First Order troopers over here, and they're very, you know, exposed. A lot of these guys straight down the middle, not even having any cover to utilize. Meanwhile, the clones on the opposite side are utilizing their cover way, way better. I mean, there are a few troopers exposed, but, you know, less than the First Order side over here. Not to mention the First Order hasn't made progress upwards to the same level of barricades that the clone troopers have. Straight down the middle, I'm not seeing a lot of First Order, and I'm not seeing a lot of clones either. I'd say pretty even right there, just a scattering of troopers all sort of fighting with each other right now. But then on the far right here, I would definitely say that the First Order is probably winning against the clones. The clones are pushed pretty far back here and going up against just a sheer wall of First Order soldiers, and the First Order seems to be getting a decent amount of fire out here. So I'd say, yeah, on the far right, the First Order is probably triumphant at the moment and managing to get the most out of this battle, whereas the clones are struggling a little bit more to come forward. You know, they do have some squads just sort of crawling on up here, and looks like they're taking up refuge on some of these boxes. That's actually a pretty good move. Yeah, crawl your soldiers up and then get into a position closer to the enemy and then surprising them as such. It's almost like a mini little ambush there that the enemy probably didn't see coming. It seems like they're taking charge of this little courtyard area over here, settling up over there. Meanwhile, the First Order hasn't even made it to that area. They're still hanging back in their own little village area over this way, you know, inside the buildings and whatnot. So once again, we're seeing the clones taking far more risks in this battlefield than the First Order has in the slightest, and that could honestly just have to do with the start of the battle, the clones managing to you know, pull that little victory out of their hat, you know? That's definitely got to be influencing the remainder of this battle. Even still, some of those remaining clone troopers left alive straight down the middle. The First Order still hasn't even dealt with them. And meanwhile, on both flanks, clones continuing to creep their way forward. I mean, they are starting to take more and more losses, but I imagine the First Order is experiencing similar losses. Meanwhile, the First Order is having to take a hyper defensive positioning against the clone troopers. who are just sort of blitzkrieging them right now, and you know, only time will tell who ends up having the better strategy. But as it stands right now, I would say that the First Order is likely losing this battle overall. You know, but maybe later on in the battle, when the clones really start getting more and more aggro, we'll see that the First Order defensive strategy pays off. I'm just saying that, like, you know, if the clones overextend too much and really go deep into just straight up defensive positions of the First Order, then they could be looking at some tremendous losses down the road. And as we can see right here, even more aggro clone troopers coming on forward. They are in the center of the battlefield now, and they are not stopping. They are continuing to push further and further upwards, and just driving home the point that they are the alpha on the battlefield right now. I have to say, I'm kind of disappointed in the First Order. Their numbers are dwindling pretty hard, and both sides were completely even to start. They had the same number of machine guns, same number of snipers, same number of regular assault rifles, same number of troopers overall, but the First Order is getting just squashed right now. It could just have to be with the clone troopers being better trained and better soldiers. I mean, the First Order is a slave army, and morale with slave armies is never that good. You know, a true comradeship and brotherhood is always the preferred way, I would think, to raise up an army, and a slave army can just never hope to replicate that type of camaraderie and stuff like that. Not to mention, the clones were literally bred to be super soldiers, whereas the First Order were just sort of random kids picked up off the street or stolen from their homes. They don't have that edge that the clone troopers do have in terms of versatility and professionalism on the battlefield. So, you know, we're sort of seeing the collapse of the First Order right at this very moment, and it is pretty devastating right now. I almost want to run the battle again, but without the sort of opening bit, without the troopers straight down the middle fighting each other. I think we will end up doing that, actually, because I think it would be interesting, because right now the First Order is slowly getting squeezed to death back here, and they are not managing to do anything about it. The clones are just curb stomping them right now. They are just getting curb stomped, and that's just about the end of the battle. Wow, there's like one trooper in there. He died. There's one First Order trooper over here. Let's send him out. Try and get a kill, maybe? Well, he got a couple shots off, but ended up dying. The clones completely annihilate their First Order army here. Wow. If we look at the losses, yellow are dead First Order troopers, red are dead clone troopers. Clone troopers destroyed, absolutely demolished the First Order. This is honestly very, very impressive from the clone troopers. I'm shocked. I thought this was going to be a very, very even battle, but that was not so. So let's run it again without the troopers in the middle to see if that makes it more of a fair fight, you know? Both sides coming forward. So let's run this again. Alright, fellas, the exact same battle, the exact same troopers as before, except there's nothing down the middle. Let's see how this goes. I'm guessing maybe the First Order will have a better opportunity of pushing a little bit farther in, maybe even getting into these houses and stuff like that, because there won't be that initial battle. And we're already seeing that. The First Order is making it farther than they did in the entirety of the last battle, and I think there will be a lot more central fighting here, whereas in the last one, you know, the fighting for the First Order was very on the outskirts because of that initial loss that they faced. I'm just wondering if it will contribute at all to the overall outcome of the battle, though, because who knows? It could just be another clone trooper wash. It could change absolutely nothing, or it could change a lot. Who knows? Either way, a couple of First Order troopers dying in the very start of the battle here. The clones, again, seem to have come a little bit farther forward than the First Order. I don't know if that's... it looks kind of true, honestly. I think these clones might have pushed a little bit farther forward than the First Order. They are taking already more losses than in the last battle, and I think that simply just has to do with the First Order not being like sort of hammered down by that initial defeat. You know, that defeatism can be pretty difficult. I think losses are also mounting a lot faster now because we're not in slow-mo, so, you know, we notice it a little bit more. Whole lot of First Order troopers dying over here on the far flank, but they're also delivering some serious pain to the clone troopers as well. So definitely this is actually making a difference because I'm seeing way more clone troopers dying than we ever did in the last battle. So even just changing the fact that there's no conflict in the very center of the battle is changing the overall battle almost entirely, which is kind of crazy. I really like the idea of having that sort of inner conflict at the start of the battle, but, you know, it's clear that whoever the victor of that was going to take the rest of the battle home. You know, they were going to be the victors of the totality of the battle. So I think it is for the best that we don't have that because, you know, that just gives away the ending of the battle at the very start of it anyway. I'm actually not super sure who's going to win this. Losses seem to be very similar for both sides, and I think either one could end up being the victor here. The First Order is coming farther down the center than the Clone Troopers are. The Clone Troopers seem to have not really sent anyone down center, so the First Order is going to have free reign over there. If we look at the mini-map at the top left here, blue are First Order Troopers, red are Clone Troopers. Clone Troopers appear to be a little bit more spread out, whereas the First Order Troopers are a little bit more clumped together. We sort of saw that in the last battle as well, so maybe that's just the fighting style of the First Order. But simultaneously, I think they both still have basically similar numbers. I think they are both at sort of the same juncture as each other in terms of number of soldiers left alive in this fight. So it's kind of interesting to see. This is a very close battle now, whereas before it was almost a complete wash from the clones. That is actually kind of insane. Just sort of the difference that taking away soldiers straight down the middle will make in the totality of the battle. This is kind of nuts. I never thought the effect would be this massive, but it clearly is, and it's kind of neat to see overall. So, you know, the victor is still not very present right now. We can't quite tell who's going to be the winner here, but more and more I'm thinking it might be another clone trooper victory. I'm just seeing more clones, more spread out across the battlefield, and in my eyes, spreading out strategically tends to be the winning formula for battle. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it will likely be another clone trooper victory here, just based on the current situation that both armies stand in, but I could always be wrong. I mean, the clones are kind of crumbling actually on this left flank right now, and the First Order is beginning to push further and further into this courtyard, killing more and more clone troopers as they go. So you know, if one flank does crumble for the clones, then they could just get swept across in a bit of a flanking maneuver from the First Order. So that could be very, very bad. Let's hope the right flank over here for the clone troopers manages to pick it up a little bit and push a little bit harder, wiping out more First Order troopers, and that would even the odds slightly and make it a bit of more of a flank-on-flank type of a battle. But I'm not seeing that happen at the moment. And the clones are certainly dwindling, so this could be a First Order victory overall. It'd be kind of interesting because we're getting, you know, a victory for both sides in the same video. And I suppose that really just kind of goes to show the power of both armies overall. Except simultaneously, the clones did sort of completely destroy the First Order in the first battle. I mean, the First Order got smashed. I mean, there was no contest there. So I suppose one could argue that the clones are more powerful because the First Order is really struggling to achieve this victory, and it's still pretty even on both sides, and losses are pretty much mounting for both sides as well. So it could be argued that the clone victory was more powerful of a victory than the First Order victory is going to be, and I'm almost positive it's going to be a First Order victory. If we look at the minimap right now, blue are the First Order, red are the clone troopers at the top left. Clones are very, very spread out. They've got little pockets of resistance on this flank over here, and then on the far flank over this way, these guys are slowly getting crushed by a ever-growing number of First Order troopers pressuring them from all sides. So I am thinking that this will end up being a First Order victory, almost completely short, really. But again, pretty interesting battles all around. Just, it's crazy to me that switching up one little thing that it changes everything, you know? Especially the fact that that one little thing was even, you know? It wasn't like it was in the advantage of the clone troopers. The clone troopers happened to win that initial engagement. Maybe that goes to show that the clones are better at close range battling than at distance battling. But I don't think that's entirely true. The E11 and the DC-15C are essentially the same weapon, you know, damage-wise, range-wise, etc., etc. So I don't think that's entirely true. I also believe that the clones did do some pretty good distance warfare in the last battle as well, so that argument doesn't necessarily stand. We do have a little pocket of clone resistance over here. They are getting flanked ever so slightly by First Order troopers over this way, but they're taking care of that pretty nicely. So this is a cool little last stand right here. They're wiping them out. I mean, they are surviving. These fellas could end up wiping out a large portion of the First Order army, which is kind of interesting. Meanwhile, on this far right flank over here, the last remaining clone troopers are slowly getting whittled down in numbers, and they are slowly getting crushed by the First Order engaging with them. But it's good to see our boys, you know, sort of surviving at least the little bit that they are and managing to kill as many troopers as possible. This little last stand area over here did end up getting wiped out by a couple of well-placed grenades there. That'll do it. I mean, that's the way you flush out defenders who are in pretty staunch positions right there. So good on the First Order for figuring out how to deal with that pretty swiftly. Meanwhile, okay, we got another little last stand over here of a few clone troopers hiding out around these parts. Looks like they are managing a few extra kills, which is good to see. I do like it when last stands do manage to get a few more kills before the end of the battle. It makes you feel a little bit better for the troopers. You know, they're doing their job a little bit better. And managing to fight, you know, their last breath. But either way, it was a defeat for the clone troopers this time around. Still a bunch of First Order troopers left alive, but not nearly as many as when the clones won. If we look at the battlefield right now, yellow are dead clones, red are dead First Order troopers. We can clearly see that there are definitely more dead clones on the battlefield than First Order troopers, and that makes sense, obviously. But, you know, I don't know why the First Order won so easily here. I really don't know. Okay, it wasn't an easy win. The clones definitely killed some serious number of First Order troopers, but who knows? Who knows? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's interesting to see that the clone troopers won one so easily, and then the First Order troopers did win one, but it was a little bit more difficult for them. So, you know, I guess you could chalk it up to an overall clone trooper victory, but I'd say the two armies are relatively even overall. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys find yourselves at PAX East Saturday, from 2 p.m. EST to about 6 p.m. EST, I'll be hanging out at the Overtone booth. Come say hi if you are around. I'd love to meet some fans. Sorry about no Rico's Brigade, but next week we will be back at it again. Just wasn't able to make it happen this week. Either way, comment, rate, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be sure to click that subscribe button for more content, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to whenever I live stream or upload. Thanks so much.